Hello friends, and welcome back to the piano lesson. My name is Jonathan Eder. Today's theme is going to be about chords, but there's no such thing as chords. What do I mean by that? So, music is really about melody, and a chord is the result of two or more melodies being played at the same time, and we refer to that as counterpoint. Now, I think of a chord as a snapshot in time. So when we're listening to music, at any given moment we can kind of stop the game and evaluate what's going on melodically, and we can ascribe a description of how the melodies interact with one another, and we can call those a chord or a harmony. Okay, but we don't really listen to chords as such, because in terms of a vertical, we don't listen vertically, we listen horizontally over time. And music is a story in sound over time. That's really what music is. So knowing that, it can help you to learn music. And while learning chords is fine, there's nothing wrong with learning chords, right? But learning to appreciate the melodic line, taking each strata of the piece of music. So let me give you an example. Over here I have this kind of little chart over here, and I'm probably going to rewrite it to show you what's going on with it. These are I want to talk about is the most likely chords you'll encounter. And I just said there's no such thing as chords, so I'm going to write chords. Okay, well, I'm not completely lying, but here's our staff. All right, and here's our treble clef. And here's our scale, okay? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, all right? And then we're back to the C again, right? And on each of those scale degrees, I can build a chord. And I just simply do that by skipping letters in the alphabet, going from a line note to the next line note to the next line note. So we're skipping the spaces in between. The next one is on a space. Space, space, space. Line, 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 right? Space, space, space. Line, line, line. Space, space, space. Line, line, line. And space, space, space. So now we have 7 or 8 distinct chords. The C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished. And then we're back to the C again. All right. Those are referred to as diatonic triads. Diatonic, dia is the Greek word for through, and tonic are essentially the notes. We're going through notes of the scale. These are and the tri meaning 3. So there's 3 notes in each chord, and it sounds like this from the scale C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, or starting on E, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, or starting on G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Each one of those is a melody. Each one of those is a melody unto itself. You have really 3, we'll call them VOICES. They're voices, okay? Like a voice in a choir. They're referred to as voices. So we have the lower voice and the upper voice and the middle voice. And if we play those voices together, like those choir voices, we get that sound. Those are parallel thirds, or we could play parallel fifths. And all of that harmonized together. Those are our diatonic chords. And those are the chords you're most likely to encounter. In this case, we're in the key of C because there's no sharps or flats in the key signature. But again, pointing out that each of those melodies, each of those lines, okay, each of those lines is a melody. All right, and that's really what makes music music. They can all be sung, and as I said, they're horizontal as opposed to vertical, right? They're happening over time. A story in sound over time. Now, typically, we would encounter only 3 of those chords in a piece of music: the C, the F, and the G. Those would be the most likely, and I'm going to rewrite this again, and those are referred to as primary chords. So I'm going to extract out those chords, and we're left with C, F, and G. All right, and those are our primary. Those are the primary chords as opposed to the secondary chords. And we give them names. We can give them number names, Roman numbers 1, 4, or 5. Or you can give them letter names, C, F, and G. All right. In the key of C, C is the first note, so we give it Roman number 1. Now, that sounds like this. And we're kind of jumping around on the piano. So the question is, there's more than one right way to play these chords. We can play them in the most basic form, which is our root position chord, the root position. So again, the root position for C is C, E, G, but that's not the only way to play it. You could also play it E, G, C, or you could play it G, C, E, and the way you express those is C/E and C/G. This chord is the root position, and both of these, those are the inversions. Those are the inversions. Inversions. Those are the inversions. This chord is first inversion, and this chord is second inversion. All right, and it sounds like this. And the bottom note, and the middle note, and the top note are all melodies. They're all melodic lines in and of themselves. There's this, and this, and this. And so again, that's what I mean to say that there's no such thing as chords. We're really listening to the melodic line. Now, if you want to take those primary chords and play them in such a way as to make them sound more melodic, well then what you need to do is you need to arrange those chords, some in root position and some in inversions. This is root position again, C, E, G. That's the C chord. And then rather than going up here to the F, I can stay down here in the relatively same spot on the keyboard. The C chord has 3 notes, C, E, G. The F chord has 3 notes, F, A, C. They have a C, O, M, M, O, N, a common tone. The common tone, F, A, C, right? It's the C. They have a common tone. Of course, this C is higher on the piano and this C is lower. So another way to approach that is using an inversion. C, E, G, C, F, A. I'm keeping these 2 notes the same, and I'm changing the notes that I need to change. So from E to G, they step up to F and A. Likewise, down here, that just remains the same. So you have a constant, C-O-N-S-T-A-N-T, a constant, and a variable, something that changes. So here's your F chord, F/C. That's second inversion. And the melodic line, all right, is that's the melodic line. Da da dum. That's a little more melodic than da dum bum. That's a little, a wider skip, and it's just a little more abrupt, a little more a little less melodic, but right. The middle voice, which sounds like dee da dum, and the lower voice dee da dum. And if you have three instruments, they'll be playing those three voices, right? Those like three violins playing, or three saxophones playing, or three people singing. Again, we can give these chords names using Roman numbers, and the Roman number in C would be 1. The Roman number in the key of C, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, we give that a 4. And here's where the notation gets a little more descriptive, a little more specific. We can describe this inversion by looking at the interval relationship. C, the lowest note, up to A, the highest note. That is a sixth. C, D, E, F, G, A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a sixth. Line note, space note. And then we have the lower interval C up to F. C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a fourth. And that also is a line note and a space note, even numbered intervals. And so we can describe that. We use Arabic numbers, and in the lower right-hand corner, we write 6, 4, and that's how it's done, and that's referred to as figured, F-I-G-U-R-E-D, figured bass, and that's been around for about 400 years, and every music theory book on the face of the earth uses it, and it's a good idea, and it doesn't get tougher than that. Okay, and then the other primary chord, the G chord, the 5 chord. The G chord is G, B, D, G, B, D. Well, G, B, D and C, E, G, the common note is G. So let's just keep that G the same, okay? That G is the same on the same line. And instead of go from the E and step down to the D, and go from the C and step down to the B. And now you have a G chord with B in the bass. That's first inversion. And we describe that as 5 and the Arabic number 6, because this interval is an interval of a sixth. That's your sixth. This is an interval of a third, but we don't describe the third. It's really not necessary. And so the smooth voice leading is much more melodic. Da 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 dee dee. That's the top line. G A G G G, and then the middle line E F E D E, and the bottom line C C C B C. All right. So those are your melodies, and when you learn a piece of music, it's a great idea to approach the piece in that manner. So rather than feeling obliged to play all of those 3 notes at the same time, okay, which can be a little daunting in some instances, and there's more, of course, you're not limited to 3-note chord, you could have a much more complex chord, but just isolating the bottom line, isolating the middle line, isolating the top line, and you could learn almost any piece of music, no matter how complicated, if you can strip it down like that. Now, a conductor is going to be looking at something like a SCORE, a score, an orchestral score. So he's going to be looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's going to be looking at, let's just say, 3. Here's 3, THREE, STAVES. That's the plural for staff. Okay, one staff, many staves. So these are 3 staves connected by a bar line. That's your bar line. All right, that's your bar line. And then very often we have what's called a brace. But all of these are called a SYSTEM, a system. That's referred to as a system. So here's your clef again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's your treble clef for that staff. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's your treble clef for that staff, right? So those are three different. Here's your C, here's your E, and here's your G. Your C, your E, and your G. And that's what a conductor would look like. So let's just say that in a conductor's score, you might have, let's say, I don't know, a first violin, and then a second violin, I don't know, and then a viola. All right, so those are the three instruments that you might have, and they'd be written with different clefs probably, but in some instances. But that's how to think in terms of these three distinct melodic lines. Okay, so you could take an example of as I said, a very complex piece of music, like a Beethoven sonata. We could examine that at greater length, if we had more time. But again, just conceptually, very often when we're learning music, and especially for beginners, but even people who are more accomplished, very often when we're learning piano music, we learn the left hand alone, then the right hand alone, hopefully, right, and then both hands together. Okay, and that only gets you so far. Okay, because very quickly that's okay for beginning music, but very quickly the music becomes more difficult because it has more voices, okay, more melodic lines. And so if you're not thinking in terms of counterpoint, if you're not thinking in terms of melodic lines, if you're not stripping that out and having the patience to practice it. Now, I'll be honest with you. In all the years I've been teaching, and I've been teaching a long time, very few people have the inclination or the patience to do that. So that's fine. But the ones that do, they really go on to great things, because they learn how to make the piece, again, two things, manageable and meaningful. So manageable, you're taking a complex idea and breaking it down, but meaningful, because what the meaning in the final analysis, the meaning of the music is the melody. And one really good test to see if you've learned the piece is simply, can you hum it? Well, you can't hum a chord, right? But you could hum the melodic lines of the piece, the internal lines, the upper line. Typically, we associate the melody with the highest note or the highest line, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be, the melody could be the lowest notes possible, or another line internally. And it could be a little bit like a relay race. They could sort of shift. So first the low voice has the melody, then the middle voice, and the upper voice, kind of like a cascade of events. And it's our job as musicians to sort of seek that out, determine what the melodic material is, what is the supportive material, and then bring out the melodic material. I mean, that's a pretty good generalization. There's always exceptions, right? But that's probably the best thing to do. So that's making it meaningful. If you can't hum the piece, if you can't conceptualize the piece melodically, you're going to have big problems. But yeah, you could always, of course, you can just learn chords out of convenience, and you could learn to play a piece superficially, and that's fine. Because here's another element, and the other element is that, which is unfortunately neglected, but the other element is dynamics. Now, when I was first learning music, dynamics was kind of an afterthought, and it was a generalization. So the dynamics of a piece, how loud or soft the music is, right? So you have two basic types of dynamics. dynamics. All right, there's two basic types of dynamics. You have absolute. Okay, so an absolute dynamic is forte or piano or mezzo forte, and then you have relative, relative, relative dynamics. And a relative dynamic is going to tell you whether to get louder or softer in general. So typically we would call that a crescendo, abbreviated CRESC. Sometimes you might see a symbol like this. Now, this symbol, I'm going to warn you, is a trap that musicians fall into, because that symbol actually in Mozart's music refers to a rubato. And there's a whole, I think it's Seymour Bernstein that talks about that at length. So just be careful. Because if you see that symbol in music, it means something else. But crescendo or diminuendo, all right? Typically, also you see you might see this as a diminuendo, okay? But getting louder or softer. If you tell someone to get louder or softer, you have to tell them where to start and where to end. So you might say, yes, start soft. Start at piano and become forte, or vice versa. Start mezzo, maybe mezzo piano, and that's half soft, in between loud and soft, and then get really loud, that's 2 Fs or fortissimo. Now, when I was first learning, I thought the dynamics were just something you work on afterwards, after you sort of learn the piece, okay? That's a really completely backwards idea. In my estimation, the dynamics are what convey the musical phrase, and the dynamics are what, it's almost like the bag that holds the notes, okay? What keeps kind of all making some sense. So if I'm playing a pattern on the piano, this pattern here of primary chords, right, using voice leading. It's nice to be able to play them. In the beginning, you learn to play them all at the same volume so one note doesn't stick out. But on the piano, honestly, what you really have to get good at is learning to voice the chord. Now, the word voice, learning to voice the chord, that can mean a couple things. A chord, as opposed to a voicing, voicing. So a chord voicing might refer to an inversion, or it could refer to taking the middle note out and moving the notes around like a little shell game, okay? But to voice a chord means to bring out one note, make one note louder or softer over the others. So here all the notes are the same volume. Here the middle note is louder. And you can hear that melodic line. It's a pretty melodic line. It's a little more interesting than the lower note. Or the upper note. Wrong note. Right? Same 3 chords, but they make a different impression on the listener because of how I voice the chord using dynamics. Again, so the dynamics are what bring out the melodic line, and the melodic line could very well be the low voice, or the middle voice, or the upper voice. Right? Now I'm playing one of the lower voice first and the other notes of the chord afterwards, just to illustrate the point. After a while, you want to get to the point where you can play all three notes at the same time, and bring out one voice. There's a trick, kind of a trick to that. It takes some practice. I don't want to get too much into that today, but in general, to make one note louder in a chord, we tend to make one part of the hand, one finger heavier, so we have more weight. The other fingers are lighter. You also might play some of the notes shallower or deeper on the keyboard. You might play it with a little more velocity. There are some elements you might play it more of an oblique stroke as opposed to a pull with your finger. You might choose to pull with your finger to get a bell-like sound and slide. There are different areas of technique that one can use to achieve that. But keep in mind, there's no such thing as technique. Oh no! Well, what I mean by that is that the music drives the technique. Okay, so the technique serves the music, not the other way around. Yes, it's possible to practice quote-unquote technique in a very isolated manner. That's true. You could just learn how to play staccato or whatever. But the sooner as soon as you can, it's important to take a musical idea, no matter how seemingly simple or innocuous, and make it musical, right? Using dynamics. So right now, I'm bringing one note of the chord out, right? But I could conceivably, that's relative within the group of notes, but I could start softly and get louder, and then get softer again. That has a different effect as well. I mean, that's nicer to listen to than just to listen to. And I'm separating those chords too. I'm not connecting them. I could connect them with my fingers, or I could connect them with the damper pedal on the piano, holding the pedal down, pedal, pedal, pedal. Connecting with the fingers is a little nicer, although not always quite possible. And particularly if you play organ, that can be very important as well. And that's a whole nother area called phrasing. So phrasing is how you play the note. Do you connect the notes or separate them? Do you play staccato or legato? Those types of things. And how do you group the notes? How many notes should you connect or not? So how you play the music is just as important, if not more important, than what notes you play. Okay, we talked about a lot of stuff today, and hope I didn't throw too much at you, but I just wanted to get across a general idea. The general idea is think melodically. The idea of, it's called counterpoint again, all right? So the music of Bach is a good example. Another category might be polyphonic, poly meaning many, more than one melody played at the same time. Generally, we categorize music into two groups, polyphonic and homophonic. So we'll get more into that next week, but let's say homophonic might be Mozart, where you have one overarching melody that kind of sticks out and then the rest is supportive. And again, these are generalizations. All right, guys, got to run. Thank you again. Send me a note. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what you're up to. And I will see you next time. This is Jonathan Eder at the piano lesson. And have a great week. See you later.